Rumor, Marvel Studios' Blade reboot with Mahershala Ali going back to basics of killing vampires. JB Augustine brings us this story, and I just gotta tell ya, back to the basics of killing vampires. Was there something else that Blade did? Was there something else that Blade got up to? This is how off the rails Disney is. Think about it like this. They're saying, oh, we've got such a great idea, we're going to have Blade kill vampires. We're gonna go back to the basics of Blade killing vampires. Ooh, exciting. Ooh. Doesn't that excite you, right? Playing vampires, it's almost like he's done this. Like it's kind of his thing to fight vampires. Kind of like Captain America fighting the Red Skull, or Daredevil fighting the Kingpin, or Superman and Lex Luthor, Blade and vampires. This is news to Disney. This is news to Disney's Marvel. And this, like who would want to watch a movie where Blade is doing this stuff? You remember this. I think it was Blade Trinity that this happened. You remember? That guy, and then he jumped, and then they fell, and then it broke. So boring. Oh, so boring. We want to have, like, long, emotional conversations about what it means to be a black vampire. I guarantee you that was the major stumbling point of that show, is they tried to make a racial, like, class system inside of the vampires. Based on, oh no, the black vampires are still excluded from vampiric society. Even though you make them like the first vampires or whatever. You can go back before even this guy. I think he was the devil, or so, like son of Satan or something. I don't remember. You have to tell me down in the comments which one this guy was. I know he was super duper powerful and prophesized. It was Draco or something like that. Anyway, yeah. No, nobody wants to watch a movie about that. Who would want to see cool stuff like this? We want to see more emotional stuff. We want to see our ancestors being Xeroxed behind us that are going to help us. Ooh woo, you're not racist anymore. Ooh woo, I did the finger thing on your eye. You're not racist anymore. I don't know what that means, but you know, if you cross your fingers and put them over somebody's eyes, apparently they're not racist anymore, and they'll cry for their mother because of it. This is the current state of Marvel. Because after all, nobody wants to sit here and watch Blade, this cool guy that scares vampires just with his presence. They shine a light on him at the beginning of the Blood Rave, after he's, begun his work, if you will. And they all back away and hiss at him, and they're scared at him. They all know who he is. And you're like, whoa, this Blade guy, he must be really intense. He hasn't even brought out a weapon yet. And these guys are afraid of him. Look at that. They're all backing away, hissing, stuff like. No, we need to talk about the racial demographics of the vampires. We need to make sure that there's gay vampires. We need to make sure that there's trans vampires. We need to make sure that there's some allegory between being bitten in the neck and having your wing-wang wanged off. Yeah, your wing-wang winged off. There we go. That's what they want to get through with this. So when they come back to us and they say, BT dubs, guys, we're going to go back to the basics of killing vampires. Yeah, we got it now. We're just going to go back to the basics of killing vampires. What else was Blade supposed to do? I asked you at the top of the video. What else was Blade supposed to do? We've heard rumor that there was going to be a daughter part of this. So possibly the whole situation was Blade explaining the racial degradation of black vampires to his daughter so that she understood the world that she was coming into and how discriminatory the superheroes were, because not only were they black, but they were black vampires and they can't be accepted because of this. And it's like a double pariah that is upon them, right? And why waste your time with that when you, again, like I showed you guys, like you got cool stuff, like action stuff like this. He's like, you say, Blade, you got falling off of stuff with this guy, breaking floors and stairs and stuff, doing all the crazy flippity switchity Blade stuff he did. Yeah, no, we're not going to focus on that. We need to focus on the DEI. The DEI problems. And I want to point out to you that Mahershala Ali, he's like up there. He's like up there, not like Harrison Ford, yeah. Harrison Ford is not up there like Harrison Ford, but he's at a position where he's like, not too easy to jump around, even with a wire team, Hurts a little having that harness come in on your ribs now that you're pushing over AARP candidate age. And Marvel's again running into this because apparently nobody under 40 can be in a superhero movie. It blows my mind, but here we are. We're still recycling people who have been doing this for 20 years, doing it still. It's more demonstrative that the corporations won't take a risk unless it involves things like Blade. Because God forbid we have a cool Blade movie. That's where they want to take their risks. That's where they want to be experimental. That's where they want to focus their new ideas about society. Is in a movie about a black vampire killing other vampires of any old racial background. All right? I think the guy he was fighting there in that last movie was Egyptian. So again, like, this has nothing to do with good or bad movies. This has everything to do with the message. The message is what matters. They're willing to sacrifice the masculinity of the Blade character. A character that, I don't know about you, but he was really cool to me. I wanted to dress up like Blade for Halloween. I had a few people, you know, disagree that was a good idea. Most of it was because they said I'd look like a Matrix character and not Wesley Snipes. I don't know. You tell me down in the comments. But, yeah, you got to remember, like, back when this first came out, it wasn't even, like, the MCU didn't exist. We didn't have anything like a networked superhero environment. Blade, if you weren't familiar with the comics or his brief appearances in the Spider-Man cartoon, I don't remember, maybe the X-Men cartoon too, maybe, I don't remember. But if you're not familiar with those very brief cameos in the comic series, you wouldn't know Blade. So this is how the movie makers approached this. They gave us a supernatural hero-like figure. They didn't position him as like a paragon of society and that he had to be preoccupied with the plight of people. In fact, the first movie was a female character, I forget her name now, attempting to plead with Blade to retain his humanity. And that's part of what saves him in the end because he has trouble controlling his bloodlust. Again, like, they just took, like, what if the vampire was the good guy? And that's how they made the movie. It wasn't that difficult. Yet over here, Marvel, our good big galaxy brain friends at Marvel, Kevin Feige, like, well, we're just going to go back to the basics, killing vampires. We're going to go back to the basics of Iron Man building armor. We're going to go back to the basics of Captain America being a soldier. We're going to go back to the basics of Hulk being a rage machine. We're going to go back to the basics of Thor being a Asgardian god. I wanted to say frat boy, but I know people don't like that, so I like frat boy Thor because I think it's fun. I liked Ragnarok. I thought it was a nice, like, reprieve from the very serious Thor. I fell asleep during Thor: The Dark World. I don't like serious Thor. I don't like really dumb Thor that we saw in Thor: Love and Thunder, right? I don't like that. That's too far. But I like a guy who's out of water. I like a guy who's like, I don't understand this thing called a coffee cup. I don't know what a cell phone is. Ha, your earthly ways are very bizarre. Why is that man in a rainbow thong? You know, I really want that scene. I really want Thor being like, why is that man in a rainbow thong in front of those children? That I really want that scene. But back to Blade, you know, you're going to get stuff like out of this series that has nothing to do with Blade, clearly, because they have to go back to the basics of killing vampires. Well, what else is he going to do? I keep asking that. Maybe it's annoying to you, but it's burrowing a hole in my head of what Blade was actually doing in this series they were working on. Now they're rewriting it again. What was the goal of the show they were making if it wasn't Blade killing vampires? They did it in the 90s with the techno in the background. We've got funk now. We've got dubstep. I'm sure Taylor Swift could come up with something for Blade. I can't say it with a straight face. Taylor Swift and on the Blade soundtrack. You can see it. It probably was. It probably was going to happen, considering they got to go back to the basics. She was probably the one that did the headliner song, like a 007 song at the opening. I'm having too much fun with these guys goofing up this franchise. I'm sorry. I've given up on this. I don't know about you, but I've given up on having faith in them doing anything proper with these heroes, especially Blade. I think what Blade truly suffers from in the end is that the character doesn't have a place in the Marvel messaging hierarchy. Blade's not a character that's plighted by his position in the world. Blade has a mission to get revenge on what happened to his I believe it was his mother, I think, his mother. What happened to his mother, and revenge for the people that are harmed by the vampires and their familiars. It's a very simple vigilante story. It's a very simple, I have the opportunity to go evil, but I choose not to, but I'm not exactly cop-worthy, you know? And I think that's what Blade suffers from inside of the new Disney hierarchy, is they don't know where to fit him because he doesn't come out of the gate with an immediate gripe, the way that, like, Power Man, Luke Cage. Luke Cage has a semi-racial background, you know. The whole issue with him was he was from the ghetto, and there was trouble there, and he created a superhero team to deal with superpowered ghetto problems. And he was heroes for hire, and that sort of thing. And Blade didn't have that. Blade wasn't relegated to a black-only neighborhood. He wasn't relegated to black culture. He went everywhere the vampires were. And even in the movies, they demonstrated that. He went everywhere the vampires were, you know? And he didn't have, like, I can't communicate with you. We come from a different cultural background. He just stabbed him and went along his business, you know? Sliced with the sword, and it was over with. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it and they're underthinking it. I don't know. I don't know. You'll have to let me know down in the comments. And if you have an idea of how to resurrect Blade after all of this without an AARP can, I'm sorry, Mahershala Ali. I really think you ought to be working on, like, Hallmark movies, and, like, Man Over the Hill has great advice for younger generation movies, because it's time. You're getting into Morgan Freeman territory. I'm just telling you. You're getting up into Jack Nicholson territory. It's about time to just put on those sweatpants all the way up to your nipples and a nice frumpy shirt, maybe something like I'm wearing, and call it a day. I'm sure we could find a bunch of other guys out there that actually have the martial arts experience necessary for this and have actually followed the Blade series. It's nothing against Mahershala Ali, honestly, but we're a little bit late in the game to be taking a risk on a guy that can break his hip coming down into the superhero pose a little too hard. Okay? But, as always, I'll see you in the next video, and remember, good luck out there.